Times are changing in British politics, and one of the biggest shifts is that the Labour Party has gone back to the left. It's back in terms of rhetoric and even in terms of some of the policies to where it used to be in the 1980s and early 90s. Take some of the flagship policies, or at least aspirations, announced by Ed Miliband and his team over the past few days. So you've got people constantly calling for the renationalisation of Royal Mail, for example. You've got endless attacks on the cut to the top rate of income tax to 45%, with a lot of people in the Labour Party seemingly wanting to hike this back up to 50p. And then you've got two very important policies announced by Labour. The first is on the minimum wage, and that policy doesn't make any sense at all. And the second one is on apprenticeships and immigration. Again, that's a flawed policy. So take the minimum wage and the idea, backed by Labour, that there should be different minimum wages depending on the industry, and that somehow the government would decide which industry should have a higher minimum wage and which industry should have a lower minimum wage. In theory, it sounds quite clever, but in reality, it would be horrendously complicated, and it would effectively say that a bureaucracy can work out permanently what the right wage should be in a different sector of the economy. Also, it completely fails to understand that there's no such thing really as a sector. In a sector, you've got some very profitable, high productivity companies, some lower productivity, less profitable companies, and in effect, you can't impose a same minimum wage in all these companies and think you're doing something very clever. So you're much better off, if you want a minimum wage, to simply regionalise the minimum wage, for example, or adjust it for the cost of living in different parts of the UK, not try and be so clever as to actually believe that you can work out what the right minimum wage is for different industries. And what about the immigration policy? Well, Labour's been saying that if a UK-based company were to hire someone from outside the EU, someone from Australia, for example, or America, for every time they hire one of these people, they'd have to hire an extra UK-born or at least UK-resident apprentice. Again, that makes no sense. What they're effectively saying is they don't really like the current immigration policy, so rather than changing it, they're going to create this fake demand for apprentices, which is completely senseless. In any case, it would fall foul of EU law, because you can't say that companies have to only hire people from the UK, they'd have to hire anybody from the EU. And if you're trying to restrict immigration, as Labour now seems to want to do, well, that's not the way to do it. So I'm afraid to say, I don't think these policies make much sense. They are lurched back to the bad old days of the Labour Party being completely anti-market, anti-business and anti-capitalist. They are not thought through properly. What Labour needs to do is reinvent itself as a modern pro-social mobility, social democratic party, not go back to these kinds of bad ideas. Unfortunately, that's the route that Ed Miliband and Ed Bourne seem to have taken, and we're going to have to see where that leads them in terms of elections.